Imagine this, a burning desert, endless sand, and a man lying on the edge of death with no food, no water, and no hope left in his body. Then out of nowhere, an Apache widow appears, strong, fearless, and the only thing standing between him and death. Their meeting doesn't just save a life, it changes destiny. If you love powerful frontier stories, make sure to subscribe, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now let's get started with this story. Caleb Morgan had crossed harsh deserts before, but nothing had prepared him for the scorching silence that swallowed him during this journey. The sun beat down on him with ruthless force, turning the air into waves of heat that blurred the horizon. His horse, Dustfall, was all he relied on, but even the sturdy Mustang began stumbling under the weight of exhaustion. When Dustfall collapsed into a hidden sinkhole and snapped its leg, Caleb knew the desert had turned against him. He whispered a sorrowful goodbye to the loyal creature, buried the rifle cartridge deep, and began walking alone with only fading hope. The first day passed in a haze of blistering heat and rasping breaths. Caleb's canteen emptied before noon, its last drops tasting like warm metal. He trudged forward with sand grinding between his teeth, eyes burning, heart racing. He tried to navigate by memory, but the desert offered him no mercy, no familiar landmarks, no breeze, no shade. By sunset his skin throbbed with sunburn, his lips cracked open like broken clay. He tucked himself beside a rock outcrop for the night, shivering under the sudden cold, knowing the real fight hadn't even begun. The next morning hit him harder. His legs felt heavy, as if each step dragged chains through the sand. His thoughts grew blurry. His throat ached with dryness so sharp it felt like swallowing needles. He stared at the empty canteen and laughed once, a harsh, cracked sound, because he had no tears left to shed. When a dust storm surged across the plain without warning, the desert became a spinning world of brown and red. He shielded his face with his shirt, but grit filled his eyes, mouth, and lungs until breathing became agony. Hours later, when the storm calmed, Caleb could barely stand. He staggered forward in random directions, collapsing every few hundred feet. His hands shook uncontrollably. His vision flickered in and out. He began imagining things, voices, shapes, shadows moving across the dunes. By late afternoon, the world around him warped like a fever dream. He fell face first into the sand and didn't bother to rise. The desert hummed in his ears. He whispered a prayer to the sky, asking forgiveness, asking for peace. Then everything went black. The night wind was cold enough to rattle bones, but Caleb barely felt it. His body drifted between life and death, breathing shallow and weak. Stars blurred into streaks above him. His heartbeat slowed. Memories flashed through his mind, his mother's voice, the ranch where he grew up, the woman he once loved and buried. He tried to cling to something, anything, but the darkness kept pulling him under. Hours passed like drifting shadows. When soft footsteps approached him, he didn't know if it was a dream, a spirit, or the desert claiming him at last. A gentle voice spoke in Apache, the words rolling over him like distant thunder. Cool hands lifted his head from the sand. Something warm touched his lips, strange, unexpected, life-giving. Caleb tried to turn away, confused, but his body needed it more than his mind could resist. He drank, swallowing desperately. The taste was unfamiliar, but it revived him. His chest rose deeper, his pulse steadied. Slowly, the haze lifted enough for him to see the silhouette of the woman kneeling beside him, moonlight outlining her strong posture and dark, flowing hair. She watched him with cautious eyes. Her name was Tala, an Apache widow who traveled the desert alone. She had been gathering herbs near a rocky ridge when she found Caleb's half-buried body. The storm had blown away the top layer of sand, revealing his hand. She recognized immediately that he was still alive, but barely. With no water, no supplies left from the storm's destruction, she relied only on instinct, courage, and the natural bond between a healer and a dying man. She stayed with him through the cold night, shielding him from the wind, feeding him in intervals to keep his heart from failing. By sunrise, Caleb could open his eyes without collapsing. Tala hovered nearby, steady and quiet, crushing herbs she had gathered before the storm. She placed small amounts into his mouth and used cloth soaked in cactus moisture to clean his lips. Her movements were calm, practiced, and patient. Caleb whispered a raspy thank you, but she only nodded and continued working. He studied her carefully, her sharp cheekbones, sun-kissed skin, and the bone pendant resting against her collarbone. Something about her presence felt ancient and grounded, like she belonged to the desert itself. As the day progressed, and Caleb regained enough strength to sit upright, Tala built a shade shelter from broken branches and cloth remnants. She pointed toward the horizon, explaining that the nearest camp was too far for him to reach in his condition. When Caleb tried standing, his legs buckled instantly. Tala steadied him without hesitation, her hand firm on his arm. Embarrassed, he sank back down, feeling helpless and humbled. Yet her expression showed no judgment, only the steady resolve of someone who had weathered harsher storms than this. That night, as a faint fire crackled between them, Caleb asked her why she had chosen to save a stranger. Tala stared at the flames before answering, her voice low. She spoke of her husband Nanton, a warrior who died defending their people. After losing him, she walked away from her tribe, seeking silence rather than sympathy. The desert became her companion, her test, her grieving ground. Finding Caleb felt like the desert presenting her with a choice, one that might change more than just his fate. Her eyes flicked toward him, unreadable, almost searching. And in that moment, something shifted, something neither fully understood yet. Caleb rested against the desert sand, strength slowly returning, but another force rising too: curiosity, gratitude, and a stirring he hadn't felt in years. Tala's presence was both shelter and mystery, her silence filled with meaning he longed to understand. As the firelight flickered across her face, he sensed their paths were no accident, that something had brought them together in the one place where life should not survive. And as the desert wind whispered through the darkness, Caleb realized something else. The danger was far from over, and the real journey with this mysterious widow had only just begun. By the next morning, Caleb could stand with Tala's support, though his legs still trembled like a newborn foal. The desert stretched endlessly around them. Golden dunes rolling beneath a rising sun that promised another day of merciless heat. Tala studied the sky, the wind, and the shifting sands with the precision of someone born to this land. When she finally nodded, signaling it was time to move, Caleb felt a strange mix of fear and trust. He followed her carefully, each step guided by her knowledge. She walked ahead with calm certainty, her presence a beacon against the harsh emptiness. Their journey toward the Apache foothills moved slowly. Caleb paused often, leaning on boulders or dropping to one knee when exhaustion threatened to pull him down. Every time, Tala returned to him without frustration, checking his pulse, getting his breathing, offering herbs to revive him. Her touch was steady, her voice soft but firm. Caleb admired the quiet courage in her, the grace she carried even in silence. As they crossed dry ravines and narrow ridges, he realized that without this woman, he wouldn't have lasted one more day. She wasn't just saving him, she was rebuilding him. That afternoon, they reached a cluster of rocks where Tala found signs of water beneath cracked earth. She knelt, pressing her hands to the ground, reading the land like scripture. Caleb watched in awe as she dug through layers of dirt until moisture appeared. She constructed a small basin with stones, letting water seep upward. Caleb cupped the liquid gratefully, letting it wash through his fingers before drinking. As he quenched his thirst, he noticed Tala watching him, not with suspicion, but with a kind of thoughtful study, as if trying to understand the man she had pulled back from death. Later, under the shade of a tall rock formation, the two rested. Caleb spoke more freely now, telling Tala pieces of his past, how he lost the woman he'd once planned to marry, how he drifted through towns afterward with no purpose. Tala listened with her head slightly bowed, as though absorbing each word. When he mentioned his guilt and loneliness, her expression softened. She responded with short, gentle truths, reminders that grief shapes a person but does not define them. Her honesty cut through him more deeply than he expected. Caleb found himself opening up in ways he had not done in years. As dusk painted the sky with purple streaks, Tala finally shared more of her heart. She spoke of the nights she spent alone after her husband's death, nights so cold they felt endless. She told him how she wandered the desert not to escape her people, but to escape the pain of remembering how much she had loved. Caleb felt something stir inside him, respect, understanding, and a tenderness he thought had died long ago. He reached out to touch her hand lightly, unsure if she would accept the gesture. She did not pull away. Her fingers curled into his, warm and steady. The nights grew warmer as they walked closer to the foothills, and so did the unspoken bond forming between them. Caleb found himself watching Tala in the glow of the campfire, how the flames reflected in her dark eyes, how the wind tugged at the strands of her hair. She carried herself with quiet strength, but beneath that strength lived a deeply wounded heart. He wanted to protect that heart, to honor it. While he didn't say the words aloud, the desert seemed to understand. Even the wind felt gentler when it passed over them, carrying only whispers instead of warnings. On the sixth day, they reached the edge of the Apache territory. Hidden among rocky cliffs and tall juniper trees, the landscape changed from barren sand to green pockets fed by underground springs. Tala moved with familiarity, though slower this time, glancing often at Caleb as if gauging his readiness to face her people. When they finally entered the encampment, several Apache warriors stepped forward, wary of the outsider at Tala's side. Caleb felt their eyes on him, sharp, analyzing, protective. But Tala stood between them and him, speaking calmly in her language. Her voice held authority. Gradually, the tension eased. Caleb earned the tribe's acceptance through his willingness to help. He worked repairing tools, carrying water, assisting hunters by preparing arrows and cleaning hides. Each day he learned more about Tala's world, the traditions, the songs, the stories of her ancestors. He watched Tala teach children how to grind herbs and recognized the same patience she once showed him in the desert. At night, they sat together near the fire, sharing quiet moments that needed no explanation. The deeper their connection grew, the more Caleb realized that fate had carried him to this place for a reason far greater than survival. Weeks passed, and with each passing day, Caleb felt the weight of his old loneliness fading. Tala's presence filled the empty spaces of his soul, not by overwhelming him, but by standing beside him. One evening, beneath a sky thick with stars, Caleb turned to Tala and spoke the truth he had carried for days. He told her that she had become the guide not only to his life, but to his heart. He asked her gently, humbly, if she believed there could be a path for them beyond duty and gratitude. A path built on the bond that began in the unforgiving desert. Tala looked at him for a long moment, her expression layered with memories, battle scars, and unspoken yearning. Then she stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. She told him that healing is not found in solitude, but in the company of someone who understands your pain. She admitted that he had awakened feelings she thought she buried with her husband, and she told him she wished to walk forward, not alone anymore, but beside him. As the fire crackled and the night embraced them, Caleb held her hand, understanding that the desert had not taken his life. It had given him a new one, born of survival, courage, and a love strong enough to grow from the harshest sands.